Okay. Hi, this is Tracy Schorn, and I am inviting Regina DeMeo, who is like the family law expert on all things, who's going to answer some questions about do-it-yourself divorce or why you shouldn't do that, pros and cons, and all the rest. And Regina is a friend of the blog, and she is a member of the Maryland bar and the DC bar, or Virginia bar as well?
No, not Virginia.
Nope. Okay, but if you're in the DMV in Maryland or DC, you want to check her out if you need a divorce attorney. She's also an educator, and she does a lot in the state bar and family law. So she's a great person whose brain we want to pick on this subject. Would you like to tell, did I miss anything? You want to tell us about yourself?
Well, I mean, I'll just add that I've been doing it for 24 years. And at this point, I feel like I've seen it all. I love what I do. And I think that what you're doing is just such a great, it's just such a great thing to have out there for people, especially during a very, very difficult time when they found out that their partners have cheated on them.
Well, that's we're all about leave the cheater, gain a life.
Yeah.
Better side. And we can't get there without divorce attorneys like you. So if you have the misfortune of having married your cheater, not everyone is in that situation. But for those that do, or have kids with them, or find themselves in litigation situations, you're the person we want to talk to. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, there's Monty barking, is my personal view is that you shouldn't cheap out on divorce, that, you get what you pay for. And the reason is it can go wrong in so many different ways. And if you're a chump, you have been, you've been played, and the person that you're trying to divorce is not an honest broker. So the usual kind of advice about, work it out, hash it out, you're dealing with somebody who's dishonest. So maybe they're hiding money, maybe they're not giving the full picture, maybe they're not cooperating. I mean, it's just much more high conflict. That said, a lot of people stay in abusive relationships or whatever because they're really afraid of the financial hit and feel like they can't afford professional legal help. And into that marketplace has come online legal services like Rocket Lawyer and others that offer divorces for $299. So on the one hand, I'm like, I'm intrigued, really? You can get out for that little, but I was wondering what your thoughts are. Have you ever had to undo somebody's do-it-yourself divorce, or, can you tell me your thoughts about it? And obviously you're coming from the legal professional side of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is possible to have a do-it-yourself divorce. If, for example, you've only been married 2 years and you've kept everything separate, right? And you don't have children. Okay. That's the perfect scenario for what I would say is a do-it-yourself divorce option.
Okay.
You don't have children to fight about. There's no assets if you kept everything separate and you've only been married such a short period of time, right? But the longer you stay together, the more entangled you become financially, and also the more likely you are to probably have children together. And that's when things get really complicated. So at that point, I don't think it's wise to just download a separation agreement that, waives all alimony, waives all child support, waives all retirement. You each keep your own and you just go on your merry way.
Is that the standard form? Is that what they look like? I mean, they're just check a box, those things don't apply to you.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to, but I mean, at least I know for a fact in DC and Maryland, both courts have all of their forms online. And if you want to file for an uncontested divorce, you literally could check the boxes saying this case doesn't involve alimony, it doesn't involve child support, there is no marital property. And you could just use the court forms and proceed with an uncontested divorce because you're saying there's nothing for the court to address. So it is possible. But if you think you have a need for alimony, or there's children involved and there's going to be issues about time sharing or child support, if there is retirement in play, then you really should at least get a consult from somebody, right? At least pay the 1 hour to have a consult with a professional that can flag these issues for you. And then you're not waiving something that can't be undone. Like once you waive alimony or property, I can't fix that after the fact.
Right. I mean, I have so many thoughts about this. I get the first thought I had is even within the 2 years, what about debts? I mean, oftentimes people are financially, unfaithful as well. They may have run up credit card debts or things you're not aware of. And if you're not doing discovery or, I say do a credit report or ask for one or look one up, you might not know about hidden monies. You might know that you're not on the hook for their credit cards or car payment, whatever. I mean, that would be advice I give before you think about doing it yourself. I mean, even within 2 years, I was married under 2 years when I got divorced, and it was, of course, I had a kid and I bought property with him, but I mean, it was a mess, so, and then my other thought about, waiving away property or alimony or whatever is a lot of people who come to my site are coming from a point of view where they're feeling beaten down. They really feel like it's not in their worldview to think that I'm entitled to something. They're dealing with somebody who has a ton of entitlement and they don't have as much entitlement. And the person's told them, you can't harm the kids, you can't fight about this, just sign this kitchen table agreement and, we'll be done with it. And they're so beaten down that they might just go like, okay. And they really don't know what they are entitled to. I mean, they might give it away before they know that they have a legal claim to it. Is that something you could do? Does that come up in your 24 years of doing this?
I mean, luckily people are either through resourceful enough through family contacts or friends, and they will, at least when they're feeling that amount of pressure, come to me with that proposal and say, this is what we've talked about at the kitchen table. Am I missing anything? And at least in that 1 hour, I can flag for them, yes, this is what you're missing, right? The child support calculation should be this, or, given the disparity in incomes, you should at least ask for, 1 to 2 years of rehabilitative alimony. So I don't mind that people are willing to sit down and at the kitchen table try and hash it out. The real concern is not to sign something until you've really educated yourself.
And so things like a property settlement, from what I'm hearing, that's very difficult to come back and revisit that if you signed away,
right,
your alimony. But when it comes to like child custody, like until your kid's 18, that can be relitigated, and unfortunately, as many people have had the experience, you can be dragged back into the courts. So that would be my other thing. Is there any? I mean, what could go wrong if you did a do-it-yourself custody agreement? I mean, it could just be you're going to have to bring it up again. You may think you're saving money, but then you're going to have to go back to court anyway. I don't know.
I mean, even people that don't have a lot of sorted issues in their divorce still have to often come back to deal with custody, right? Because inevitably, one of the two is probably going to remarry or cohabitate with someone new. One of the two might move away or change jobs, which will trigger a recalculation of how you share the costs for the child. So there's all sorts of reasons why, I got divorced when my son was 2, and we still had to share custody for the next 16 years. We changed the schedule 3 times, and we changed the support amount, I don't know, over a handful of times, because circumstances just kept changing. So I don't see that as a failure if you need to come back. And sometimes, you have to wait and see whether someone is really going to, are they going to live up to your expectations and what their promises are about sharing time? Like, a lot of dads, I mean, I love my male clients because a lot of, I mean, I think 100% of them will say, I want to be an involved dad, right? I've never had a dad that abandons the child. But what they might envision as a true 50-50 may not work after 1 or 2 years. And it's okay to say, it's not working with my work schedule. It's not working with how far apart we are, right? And as long as they have the child's best interest in mind, which is what the court's going to focus on, right? It's okay to change the schedule. I feel like in this forum, right, a lot of your readers might be bullied into a 50-50 schedule.
Right. Well,
right?
and a lot of, I mean, I had this experience, a lot want 50-50 because they think that that will eliminate their child support or reduce it considerably.
Right.
But they don't actually want the 50-50. And so you wind up getting 100% of the custody with none of the child support or very little of it. It's kind of a dodge. I hear that one a lot. And then on the flip side, there are guy chumps to whom they've been screwed over, and then they only get 50% of the time with their children when they really wanted to be involved, hands-on parents. I mean, it's as we say, it's a shit sandwich either way. But
It is. But I mean, I wouldn't see it as a dodge. I just say, like, it basically, you're going to test this out over the next 2 years. And if it doesn't work,
yeah.
you have, I think, more solid ground to go back in to, even if you have to go to court and say, we gave it a shot. I was willing to try 50-50, but it really isn't working. And here's all the reasons why it's not.
Elaborate on that, all the reasons why, because we say document. And it seems like as a single parent, like an extra chore. And now they've made it so much easier. You've got parenting software and the rest of it. But what's your advice to somebody who's in this? I agree to 50-50. I agreed to this equitable agreement and it's not working out. Like, what do they need to arm themselves with when they get to you? Like, what do you want to see people have?
Well, the most important thing is actually a calendar, right? Because the courts are counting the number of overnights to see whether it's a true 50-50 or 60-40, whatever the percentage is that someone agreed to. So there's no disputing if you keep a very detailed calendar of all the dates that somebody has missed, right? And then there's all the communications that go with requests for changes. So if this person is constantly requesting schedule changes and there's no longer a consistent schedule, that's a perfect piece of evidence right there, right? If they don't show up for major events, I mean, you just have to log all of it. And that way you can go back. It's not just your word. You have the backup documents, the calendar, the emails, the text messages that all show this person hasn't participated in the past couple of years. And you do have to wait at least, I would say, 1 year. You can't go back after just a couple of months. That's not enough time. So
you got to white knuckle it through the no-shows. You gotta, you're building your case. You're building your case. Getting back to the access to justice issue on people who want a divorce but think that they can't afford a divorce. I know you do a lot of work with the bar and you do a lot of work as an educator. Is there any movement in the family law community about low bono, pro bono services for people who are, what do you do if you're truly economically vulnerable? Say you've been a stay-at-home parent or you're in an abusive situation and you really need the divorce, but you really don't know how to go about beginning to fund it. Or, it sounds like an uncontested divorce. It sounds like you can do by the court, but if you're dealing with the kind of people that we're divorcing on my site, it's probably contested. It's probably high conflict. You're in an abusive situation. What are some options for people like that?
So most bars have a detailed list of all the resources that would potentially, like, a lot of law schools have family clinics, right? I was formerly a professor at GW, which has a family law clinic. Catholic has one. American University, I think even Georgetown. So all the local law schools have clinics, and ideally you could call and try and get a student to help with, they'd be supervised by a licensed attorney to help you through that process. There's also like Catholic charities, there's legal aid. I mean, to qualify is very difficult, but then there's other programs. Like right now I have a case that I got through the Montgomery County Abused Persons Program. So the client isn't paying, but the Abused Persons Program has a grant and they're paying me at a very reduced rate. Yeah. So, but but I think it's
for doing that.
Yeah. I mean, it is a privilege to be able to have the knowledge that I have and to not fear going to court and, just understanding the process. And I feel like we do have a duty, right, to help those in need. So most of the bar associations have lists of attorneys that will do either a free consult or a low bono case. There's also a lot of people don't tap into their employee assistance programs. So one of their benefits
Oh,
as
really?
an employee is, free legal service or reduced rates legal services. There's one called Law Point. There's another one called ARAG, and CLC are the three that I know of. But they have pretty good services, which entirely, some, it depends on the plan, right? But some will
Yeah.
give you a free
Okay.
legal consult at least, and a lot of them will give you a reduced rate.
Awesome. One of the things I learned from you is that there's a whole world of divorce financing that you can get loans to help you. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, part of me is like, oh, is that predatory? These are vulnerable people. Do you want to get into debt? On the other hand, it's like, maybe you just need the bridge loan to get you to the settlement and you couldn't get proper legal help. I mean, you're of means, but you've got a cash flow issue. Can you tell me a bit about that?
So the two, most popular options that my clients usually are able to tap into is, one, they take a hardship loan against their 401k. So
Okay.
that's one way to finance your divorce. Obviously, you could borrow from family or friends if that's an option. But there are private companies, like there's a New Chapter Capital up in New York, but it's not just for New York clients. It's basically anywhere in the U.S. You have to have an opinion letter from a reputable licensed attorney that says, I've consulted with this client. I believe the marital assets are at least X, right? And as a result, this person should at least get Y. And with that letter, they will do a private loan. It's a bridge loan for a couple of years until you get your settlement or there's a final court order resolving the case. But you'd have to have some assets, right? So for example, you'd have to have at least a house with $1 million, knowing that at least half of that should go to you when it's done. So there has to be some collateral that they can attach to.
Not everyone has a house worth $1 million.
No.
Hopefully there's some kind of asset. I don't know, but look into it. For anybody who's, I mean, you're kind of underscoring a point that I have, is that you have options. I mean, a lot of people come to it going like, I don't have any options. And I'm like, no, you do. You might have to, hit the ground and Google and call and find out, but there is something out there. If you want it bad enough, you will figure out, you will chew your arm off. You will do anything to get away from this person, or protect yourself and protect your kids and, make it happen. I wish there were more, resources, because, people sorely need them. I think a lot of women, especially who are economically vulnerable, who've been stay-at-home parents, find themselves, having a hard time getting out or pulling the trigger because they're so afraid of being economically vulnerable.
Right.
Yeah. It's so you got to be scrappy, Yeah, you got to be scrappy. One thing I learned from you is that it's actually relatively uncommon to go to trial for divorce, and that the vast majority of these cases settle. I was unfortunate that I had one of the crazy people. I had what I now know is litigation abuse, where someone just keeps filing, petitions and orders, and, every month, I went through, I was doing, yeah. So, and there is a segment of my audience that has that too. But I think people need to understand that's not the norm. And most people can be reasoned with or arm twisted into being reasoned with. And I know you've done both, but how do you make a determination if you have a client who's going to be in a high conflict situation versus, hey, I know it feels like it's high conflict, but I think you could work this out. You could mediate it.
So
do you have some benchmarks?
The biggest concern I have is when someone doesn't know enough about the finances, right? Because you can't go to mediation and then just rely and hope that that person is going to truly be transparent about the finances. In cases like that, that's where court is advantageous, because you can issue subpoenas. They're under a court order to produce documents about the finances. They're going to be signing a financial statement under oath saying that this is a true representation of my finances. And then if you find out they've lied about it, there's consequences, right? So
are there? So I'm like, I had that. There were no consequences, but I don't mean to be gloomy. I'm sure there are. But, the truly disordered will be like, oh yeah, so you got me, whatever, and around you go. But yes, to your point, yes, you can put the heavy boot of the law on their neck. And
right. And then the other thing is, can you afford to litigate? I mean,
yeah,
it's
right.
a horrible thing to say, but most of us work off of large retainers when we have to go to court right away, right? My retainers are substantially less if someone says, I think this is going to be uncontested. I just need you to draft an agreement or coach me through mediation and then help me with the uncontested divorce filing. I'm not expecting to spend more than 10 hours on that kind of a case. But when someone says, I need you to file, we have to, serve them with a process server, get discovery out and all of that. I mean, it's just a function of hours. And I know you're going to need a lot of hours up front. And so those retainers can start at $10,000 or $20,000, depending on where you are, right? So, I mean, I hate to say it, but a lot of people will choose mediation, not because they really want to keep things low conflict, but because that's all they can really afford to do.
So maybe they have to do a calculus of, and again, with proper legal counsel, but if your estate is worth X or they're hiding assets of Y, perhaps you could get a bridge loan and you could afford litigation. If you think you're going to get a better outcome. I mean, it's a very personal calculus and hard to know. But I'm thinking of what if you were, most people, it sounds like, once you start doing discovery, once you start applying that pressure, will come to the table and work out a settlement, was what I'm hearing.
Right.
But you do have a segment of really high conflict people or crazy people or freaks or whatever you want to call them, who are they will not play by the rules, or they don't feel those pressures. They're angry or they're controlling or whatever, and they want to punish with litigation. And in that case, what are your options? You're just going to have to come up with the money to be in court to litigate. Would you represent yourself? Do you call the bar association and look at those legal services? Those things are all on the table. I mean, have you had clients who've been the victim of litigation abuse?
Yes, I remember vividly, there was one case where this man's wife kept filing something every single month. Every month we were back in court over something.
Wow.
And eventually he got an attorney's fee award. Eventually I had to prove, I mean, so it can happen. I mean, you have to, well, one, you can ask for it up front, right? And he couldn't because he made enough money and he had enough in savings that he couldn't go to court and say, I need attorney's fees up front in order to handle this. That he didn't qualify for that. That didn't apply for him. However, when she kept going back and she kept losing all of her motions, we were able to show this pattern. For us, it's a pattern, right? That you have to prove. And then it was, whatever, the fifth hearing where she lost, the judge finally said, this seems like a very frivolous action. It was not necessary. You didn't prevail, and I am going to award attorney's fees. And so it can happen.
Yeah, your client must have felt so vindicated. I mean, but what a hell to go through to get to that point. Nobody wants to go through that. But okay, well, I mean, part of keeping this ball going is just when you go through something traumatic like this. It's a whole skill set you don't know about. You've been doing it for 24 years. You're like, okay, this is the move and that's the move. This is what you do.
Right.
But to somebody who's new, somebody who's chumped, somebody found out that their partner is living a double life, like nothing is as it seems. You're so lost. You're so emotionally raw. To know about these resources or to even think, strategically or how to protect yourself is such a mind shift. It was such a, you've really got to turn it around. And that's one of the things I try to tell people is educate yourself as much as possible before you meet a Regina DeMeo, right? Because you're not a therapist and you're like a howitzer, right? You're just the gun that's going there, get it done. So could you talk a bit about that? Like, what what are some ways that people, if they want to be savvy, they want to, try to save as much money possible and be prepared when they're going through a divorce? What can they do? Like, what's a big time waster at your end? Is it not having your financials together, not having your papers together?
I definitely that's
that.
one, right? I mean, the more that someone comes to me with their information organized, and I don't have to spend a ton of time, right, going through identifying all the financial information that I have to give to the court, that would be fantastic. But the bigger problem is managing your emotions, right? It is not my job to manage your emotions. And I've been through a divorce. I get it as a parent. And so I can certainly empathize and have a ton of compassion for my clients. But ultimately, my job is not to help you manage those emotions. And it's a waste of billable hours, right? To pay me, who's a lawyer, to help you through the legal process. It does not make sense to spend time talking about how unfair the process is. I will grant you that the process is unfair, and it's fraught with problems. I mean, the fact that you can't access justice for 6 months usually, right? I mean, someone filed the complaint.
Virginia is a year and a day.
Exactly. So
it's insane, right?
It's very heart-wrenching that you need your day in court. You want your day in court, and here you are sort of in limbo for a year before anything can happen. That's a hard pill to swallow. But that's why I'm saying it's better to go get your expectations managed and talk through the emotional side. There's so much loss. There's the loss of your identity as a spouse, the loss of your identity as a family unit, and maybe you're going to lose your country club memberships if that was something that you enjoyed together, right? And there's always going to be a fallout with friends, always. Like, inevitably, people take sides, families take sides. Someone in your family may not believe in divorce no matter what. And so all of a sudden, you're going to lose that member of your family. So there's a profound amount of loss that you really have to grieve it. And it has nothing to do with your legal process.
With your lawyer. I mean, that one thing my divorce lawyer told me about divorce, he goes, it's a horse and pony show, Tracy, or it's a dog and pony show. He goes, and your job is to be the prettiest pony, like, don't lose your shit, like, get in there and, have your suit on and look sane and competent. And it is, as you said, it's such an emotional process. And the other side is going to try to work you up. They're going to try, and your job is to be everything not that they're saying. If they say you're crazy and hysterical, your job is to be cool and collected. If they, you drove me to cheat, whatever lie, or they're just gonna, you have to maintain your composure. And it is unnatural, and it does take probably therapy skills, that is not what the legal profession is giving you. You've got to go find your support elsewhere and just bring your game face and be the pretty pony in court. It's really hard.
Oh, it is, but it pays off. Like, I have a couple of examples of, clients who their spouses or partners would send nasty emails, and they wouldn't engage. They would say, I'm sorry you feel that way. And getting back to the point about the custody exchange, here's the time that I can pick up Johnny, for example, right? So one person, and I'm not even saying they were wrong in their feelings, but they put all of this venom in black and white, and it was used against them in court. So whatever feelings you have, you really do need to work them out outside of this system and minimize what you put in writing.
Right. Yeah. Paul has this thing about going to court. He's like, if it feels good, don't do it. I mean, he's doing employment law and civil rights law, but it's like, you want to retaliate, you want to write the venomous letter, don't do it. If it feels good, don't do it.
Or do it and burn it.
Do it, okay.
Get it out of your system and burn it.
Stab something. Just don't do it in court. Don't do it where a judge can see it. You know, right. I know. It's all, or you can come to Chump Lady and, you know, you can under a screen name that nobody knows, they can't find it. Be careful what you post online. That's a whole other thing. You're going through divorce. Don't leave
Right.
the vapor trail where you can be found, but you can work it out. I'm trying to come up with any more questions for you. Is there anything else that you want to say to my audience? If they're going through it, you know, just words of encouragement or be a pretty pony, whatever.
I mean, no, I would say that I want to honor the fact that it is a terrible experience for any of us to go through, and I've been through it myself, right? And it was horrible when I discovered that this person that I thought was in a committed relationship with me was off doing other things.
Yeah.
And so it happens to the best of us, and the more you can like go no contact, right, as best you can, and not get sucked back into those mind games, and just empower yourself, you know, find new friends, find a new financial advisor, and new colleagues that can help you through this difficult time, and really isolate that person from your life. That's the best thing you can do, because it'll get better, right? Like you will have to maybe go through a year of crappy stuff, but it will eventually get better.
I like your optimism.
I mean, you're living proof of it, right?
Oh, well, thank you. But yeah, it doesn't feel that way when you're going through it, which again is the point. It's the point of the community, right? We're here to say it gets better, and you're the midwife to making it better. You're helping people through this really nasty passage, which a lot, you know, can't do it without super skills like you have. So thank you. And so if you could tell everybody where to find you, like your blog and your website, is your reginademeo.com.
Yep, my website, you can easily find my blog there, and then when I do videos, I do post them on YouTube, and so my handle on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, it's all Gen X Smarty. Smarty like the candy.
Okay. Be a smarty. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
This
has been great.
Yeah, thanks. Okay.